it's a very important political and powerful role, and it's just been turned into a circus by Harry and Meghan, and for their own benefit.
Hi, Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is journalist and author of The Windsor Legacy, Robert Jobson, and journalist and former Sun Royal correspondent Charles Ray. And Jobson just said to Ray, I had to deal with you a lot on the road. So I love that I'm getting to witness such a beautiful, gentle, kind reunion between some old chums.
It was never that good. No,
it was better than it is today, mate. Honestly, it was quite fun on the road when Charlie and I were on the road.
We worked together enough. We worked together an awful lot, and we worked against each other. And I think it's fair to say we had a great deal of mutual respect for each other, and still have.
I love that.
And we went up the Himalayas together. We went to a place called Nand Bazaar, and Charlie got all the way there. It was slightly slower than the rest of us, but that's not the rest. That's not fair to say. But he managed to get there. I remember him bringing a cake for the Duchess of York, who was on this charity mission. But it was quite an amazing adventure, and I think not many people can say they've trekked the Himalayas or been to the middle of Zimbabwe and God knows where else we went together. So it was a remarkable journey. And I also remember my favorite story, which I'm redoing on my Substack at the moment, of about times it was when Charlie who never drank in his life. He used to be a brilliant observer of everything. And so I was trying to get this story about Mother Teresa, Diana going to see Mother Teresa. And I was talking to this this former diplomat at the bar, and Charlie was watching my every move, and we did a deal to write that Diana was going on a mercy mission to see Diana in Rome, which was a big story, which we cut out Mr. Whittaker from the story, which was quite a bold move, I think.
Whittaker, I haven't heard that name in so long, but you used to hear it around Princess Diana a lot. Is that because he liked that beat, or was that just the time frame that he
was one of the best? He was one of the most well-known royal correspondents of his day. There was him and Harry Arnold, who were, if you like, in those days, the doyens of royal correspondent. But obviously, neither of them are no longer with us.
But you cut him out.
We learned a lot, but both Charlie and I were on the sort of the beat at the same time, sort of around about that. I feel very blessed to have worked alongside James and Harry and Charlie, because they were all. I think that in those days, if you're talking about the way that a lot of things are dealt with now, which is rather tedious, actually. You've got to be in a WhatsApp group here and there and everywhere. It really was about getting out on the road, getting the stories, making contacts, and breaking those stories, whether the palace liked it or not.
That is true. It does feel like they are in more control than ever. But do you see a difference? Because you mentioned WhatsApp groups, and when I was there last month, there was an explosion over the Sussex WhatsApp group, and how some of the members of it felt like they were led astray or given bad information. Do you feel like the Sussexes try to control it or have the same control that the palace does, or have they not mastered that yet when it comes to?
I think, Kinsey, it's all about this. It's all to do with the way that social media post-Levis inquiry has sort of taken over. The fact that there's limited things that can be done without clearing it from the palace. But I think, I'm not a member of this WhatsApp group, the Sussex groups. They're not. I'm a member of the Royal Rota, which is a slightly different thing.
And way better. Oh, way better.
Yeah. The Sussexes are trying to do it in a way that they can be in control like that. But I don't blame Liam Maguire on this. He basically was told by his boss to put out a schedule, and then obviously it all changed. It wasn't a bad thing PR-wise to put out a schedule, but on that schedule it said that Meghan was going to be accompanying him, and she was going to be at this event and that event, and specified it. So clearly the two at the top are very not consistent with their own PR.
Very, very true. Well, we mentioned the Diana years, and I knew I had two alum that would be able to discuss this or break this down beautifully. TFI Unplugged host Chris Evans interviewed Amanda Wakeley about styling Princess Diana in her tiny studio in the back end of Chelsea. And I think what a lot of us took away from this story was Diana's security detail was surprisingly sparse. You know, the Princess of Wales, according to this story, would show up alone. So let's take a
That's
look.
not true. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
that is,
Hold
no,
on.
it won't be true. That won't be
Let's
true. It won't be true.
let's look at what she says, and then I'll get your reaction.
I used to dress Princess Diana.
You've dressed Michelle Obama, Helen Mirren, Beyonce, from Princess Diana, Princess of Wales. What was it like doing those things? Do they call you? Do you call them? Is there somebody who gets you together, a mediator?
Generally, it's all done through an intermediary, a stylist,
right,
who is working with said people. Right. So sadly, but back in the day, I used to dress Princess Diana, and she would come to my tiny little cupboard of a studio in the back end of Chelsea. So that was before celebrity stylists got involved and all of that. So I had some magical times with Diana.
I mean, very clandestine meetings, I should imagine.
Well, I thought they were going to be clandestine, but not at all. I mean, in my ignorance, I thought, oh God, they'll send the sniffer dogs in before Diana arrives and all the rest of it. Oh no, the doorbell goes 10 minutes before she was due to arrive, and it's Diana herself on the doorstep, sort of standing on one leg, sort of apologetically saying, I'm sorry I'm early.
Oh my gosh.
And we had a laugh.
Yeah, but I mean, I wrote a book with Ken Wolfe, Diana's bodyguard. He would have been outside. He might not have had to go inside the studio, but he wouldn't. I mean, I think he once let her walk down. She said, I really want to walk down a beach on my own. He gave her a walkie-talkie when she was down in Dorset, I think it was, and he met her at the other end of the beach. But no, he would have been outside just because he wasn't in the tiny studio. There was no need for him to be in there. He knew who she was going to see. There was no, and that if she needed him, she would have called him on the radio. So there's no way that the bodyguards had just left her to go walking through the streets to go press on the doorbell and go there. Just isn't right. Maybe Amanda just got it wrong. The reality is the coppers would have been outside. They'd have been watching the situation, make sure there was no paps around, no problems around, and they would have kept an eye on it. Just because the designer didn't know that's probably part of the reason it wasn't told.
Charles Ray, I think current royal watchers observe an interview like that, and they think back to Australia, where you visibly see Harry and Meghan's entourage, the wall that they've built around them as they're walking along Bondi Beach, or the protocol we see with Prince Harry when he jumps out of the car in the UK. And they think Diana just seemed more relaxed about it than Prince Harry seems to be.
Well, she was more relaxed about it, and we've got to make this quite clear. There's a big misconception that Diana's bodyguards were taken away by the late Queen, which is not true. She herself was the one who gave them up because she was paranoid that she felt that the bodyguards were giving information to the then Prince of Wales and other members of the family. So she said, "Sorry, I don't want them anymore. I'll manage on my own."
Well, it's to do with Oliver Hall. I mean, it was to do with Oliver Hall, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was the situation, that there were no real bodyguards apart from the time that she's with the children, or if she was on some official job. Now, I don't know when this Amanda Wakeley, I can't remember when it was that she says that Diana came around. I'm not doubting that she went round to see Amanda Wakeley, but it was in 1993 that Diana did away with the actual bodyguards. But she then did have someone, and Robert will back me up on this. There was a chap called Colin Tebbit, who was a former Met police officer, who was her, if you like, bodyguard stroke driver. So Robert's right. The very fact that Diana knocks on a door does not mean that there's someone not outside.
I just think the observation is Harry rolls with an entire army when he.
But let's not forget, Diana rolled with an entire army at one stage as well, as do other members of the royal family. It's not unusual for VIPs, not just royals, but VIPs. you look at the background and you'll see these hulking, great big, huge people behind them who are private security. Well, the Met Police are not short in protecting their people as well. So it's not exactly right for Amanda to turn around and say that she just turned up on the doorstep. I mean, Diana would have driven there or been driven there. She would have had to find a place to, if with no bodyguard, to find a car parking space. These sort of things royals don't have to do because they've got people to do it for them. And people like Colin Tebbit would have done it. And there is, as Robert says, he's right. There's no need for the bodyguard or the police officer or whoever to actually be in the studio with her while she's there, because it's a secure spot. Best of all is nobody actually knows she's there, which is also one of the great.
I mean, that's the point. I mean, I remember Ken telling me about a time that he was her bodyguard in France, in Paris. Not the Paris. At the time, sadly, he wasn't there, but and she was having dinner with lunch with Gerard Depardieu, the actor. No, not. She was having lunch with somebody else, and then Gerard Depardieu came over and started talking to her. Then that's what alerted the paparazzi, because outside they were then waiting for Gerard Depardieu. Now, up until that point, Diana with a headscarf on, or Diana with a different hat on, nobody had recognised her. And then Ken was just sitting there watching, and so he would go on a trip. Towards the end, she would say things like, "I don't want all the fuss," and said, "I want to do it normally." And on one occasion, they were going down to the south of France. She wanted a holiday there, and Ken said, "Okay, well, if you want to do it normally, do it normally. You have to queue up with everyone. I won't have any VIP treatment." Well, she queued up with all these people and didn't give her the VIP treatment, where they get taken, straight onto the plane. And there was a group of girls that were just going on a hen weekend to Marbella or to France, wherever it was. And suddenly said, "Oh, look, it's Di," and they sort of surrounded her and started charging around. And as a result, he quickly had to snuffle her off to the VIP area. So, that's how it would work. They would be they were quite subtle. When at Scotland Yard, it was quite subtle. I'm not going to disrespect Harry's people, but they're not exactly the most subtle bunch, are they? The way they walk around as if they're in RoboCop,
All right. Well, to a much more delicious tale, Martha Stewart has called out Meghan Markle for clout chasing, which I think is glorious. When Martha Stewart is side-eyeing your lifestyle credentials, that's got a sting. She told People magazine, one of Meghan's favorite publications this week, that Meghan Markle's jump from actress to princess to homemaking personality films feels forced rather than natural. And then came the accidental tea. She revealed that she was at a dinner party where Meghan was also in attendance. And Meghan had just returned from Britain and was actually talking to the guests there about her reunion with King Charles. Martha wasn't part of that conversation. She stressed, we know she has a relationship with the palace. She was talking about on Instagram, King Charles's hot equerry recently. So we know she loves the palace. And she stressed she wasn't a part of the conversation, but she certainly noticed Meghan making sure everyone else was. I just think that this is a very poor reflection on Meghan Markle if this is true, Charles, because who's going to call Martha Stewart a liar?
Well, as you know, Kinsey, I'm not an apologist for Meghan Markle, but I have to say, I think this is a bit of a strange story from Martha Stewart. She doesn't know what the conversation was. She may have heard something about I met the king, but that's not breaching her confidence. The whole world knew she met the king, and we don't know the context of the conversation. And let's not. Well, I mean, Martha Stewart's had her own troubles. I mean, she is someone who was convicted, of a serious offence and served 5 months in prison with.
Neither one of you are being fun today.
Sorry?
Neither one of you are being fun today.
No, I just want to try and get this into context, Kinsey.
Into context, Meghan Markle leaked that she was the second coming of Martha Stewart, and this is Martha Stewart saying, "The hell you are."
I understand that, but Martha Stewart didn't hear the conversation or the context of the conversation.
She says, "I did hear it." She said, "I didn't engage in it, but I overheard it."
Oh, if she did overhear it, she's not revealed what was actually said.
Right.
In the conversation.
Well, maybe that's the next instalment of Martha Stewart's post
Snoop Dogg, Martha and Snoop Dogg, the next installment of their show.
Well, I mean, if she's heard it, and other people have heard it, then it's going to come out. I'm surprised if she's spoken about it at a dinner party, which is probably a bit daft if she has, to say the least, Meghan. It's bound to come out, isn't it, in time? It'll be told in Friends from People magazine. But Martha Stewart's playing a game here, isn't she? She's sort of look at me. I might tell you, I might not. Yeah,
she's as a slight insult where she was an actress, then she became a princess. Now she wants to be a house goddess or a kitchen goddess or whatever, which is Martha Stewart's forte. So I can understand the dig from one professional, if you like, goddess to someone who pretends to be a goddess. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a snipey thing that she was saying. I don't take it seriously myself, personally. Sorry.
Rob, did you have anything to add to that?
There's only one goddess. It's Kinsey's the goddess. But the reality is,
I'd go along with that one.
I think that Martha Stewart's, is probably just getting ready to sort of leak it some other way, isn't she? I mean, she's obviously got a bit of she's probably pretty narked with Meghan, who's trying to take over that. He's got her tanks on her lawn, and I think she probably somehow or other it's going to leak. But if Meghan was being sensible about this, would she have raised all this? As Charlie just said, we know that they met at the Highgrove High Tea, whatever it was called, and we know that that was part of the deal, was that they say nothing. She won't be able to keep her mouth shut. It'll come out. People magazine. I look forward to reading it.
I do think, Jobson, correct me if I'm wrong, it does feel like, well, no, I mean, there are some statistics that suggest that an older generation feels more connected and invested in the British royal family. Also, it seems like if you are an A-lister, or if you are, somebody that's truly making it in the world, you want to be associated with the royal family. If you think about Taylor Swift, I've heard Reese Witherspoon turn down doing Meghan Markle's podcast at one point. So I guess that this tracks if you think about why Martha's allegiance might be towards the British royal family. If you think about demographic and the fact that, we've seen some A-listers say, actually, I want to be invited to the next coronation or the next whatever event that occurs. I'd rather be on their side.
I don't think they want to muddy themselves with the tarnished image of Meghan and Harry. I mean, they're the people that are desperate to make a comeback, Meghan and Harry. Everybody else seems to be doing quite well. I mean, you only have to look at the Waleses this last couple of weeks. They've been on A form. They've been really up there. And I think that even, with respect to the king, there's a lot of people upset that he's giving Harry too much traction. I think that, his trip to America, where he was brilliant, I think, in his speeches and in the liaison and his reaction with Trump. I think a lot of people have got respect for him too. So yeah, I mean, the reality is the A-listers know what side their bread's buttered. They always have.
Charlie?
I was just going to say, I think it's more of a case of Martha Stewart, this well-known, world-renowned domestic goddess, was just setting out a stall and saying, listen, chummy, if you think you're going to try and take my crown, my domestic crown away, you're not. You're an actress, you're a princess, now you want to be a domestic goddess. I think it was a little bit of that sort of going on.
Shade is what you're saying. You felt the shade. All right, well, Robert just mentioned a bit of this, something alluding to this. Prince Harry's relationship with King Charles seemingly improving. And now we're reading reports that he hopes King Charles will join him at next summer's Invictus Games in Birmingham, with organizers expected to extend an invitation to the monarch for either the opening or closing ceremony, as well as several sporting events. And according to insiders, Harry sees the 2027 Games as a defining moment and is determined to make them the most successful in Invictus history. Having his father in attendance would be deeply meaningful, according to the source, both personally and symbolically. Now, I raised the concern that King Charles is the constitutional head of the British Armed Forces, so he might feel obligated to do something like this, Jobson. But my audience was so mad and said the Queen never showed up, so why should the King be expected to? Queen Elizabeth.
Well, Charles was at the first one. I was Stratford. I was there. And it's going to be, you know, this is a ploy, isn't it, that Harry always operates now, that he leaks out the story that he wants his father there. He needs a meeting with his father. And of course, that puts pressure on the palace. So the ball's been whacked firmly into Charles's court. And yes, as the titular head of the armed forces, it does give him a bit of a problem. I personally think he'll think long and hard about this. He knows that actually the people around him know that it will actually give Harry more traction, and it'll make him more of a difficult problem for William. You know, I think that what's he going to keep doing this if he gets the money? Let's also remember that if you have the King coming, it does raise much more awareness, much more money, much more input to the actual event. I mean, it always does. I think it's quite interesting that Clive Alderton, his private secretary, is leaving, and he won't be around for that, because I can't imagine many people close to the King advise him that it's going to be a good idea. But the King will also be thinking not only of his son, but he'll also be thinking of the men and women that have served with distinction in the armed services and been injured. And I think that'll weigh heavily on his mind as well. So I think it's probably being weighed up at this moment in time. The only real beneficiary to all this would be Harry, because I think even if the event goes ahead with Harry there, I think all the people for the armed services, the people taking part, will be happy enough. But it will put a bit. I mean, the fact they've pushed hard that this is what Harry wants, it makes it more difficult for the King.
Charles?
Well, I think that this is not the first time that we've heard this. This was something that was leaked out, I think a month or so ago, that Harry would like the King to be at the Invictus Games. I agree with everything that Robert has said, to be perfectly honest. And personally, I will be very surprised if the King does agree, to either be at the opening ceremony or the closing ceremony or anything in between. There's an awful lot of people sort of saw the tea party, the hour-long tea party, as the olive branch. This is it. It's all going to get well and everything's going to go fine again. It's not fine. There is still a gulf between Harry and the rest of the family.
The King. I mean,
the King. Yeah, I mean, I'm not only just the King, but you've got to keep on factoring William into this. William's not interested at the moment of any reconciliation, and it'll be interesting to see when he is king what happens to Harry. But we're talking about the Invictus Games. I'm always full of praise for Harry and the Invictus Games. It's his baby. He's done well out of it. And I don't mean financially. I mean, he's done well out of it in promoting it and everything else. Is Meghan going to be there? That would be the opportunity. See, that's the thing they've got to think of as well, is if the King actually goes, I bet your bottom dollar that Meghan will make sure that she's walking down beside him as well. Because that's what she really needs. She really needs that picture of Harry on one side, and the King on the other. So I'm like Robert. I think there'll be people at the palace who will be thinking, oh God, no, we can't have this. It's not going to be. And there would be people maybe advising them, saying it might be a good idea because you are, de facto colonel in chief of the armed forces. But there'll be others saying, Harry will use this, for his own ends. There's no question about that. And Meghan, they'll use this for their own ends. They've had the tea party. Let's see what happens next time. In September, he's due to come over for Wellchild. Is Meghan going to come across? Is he going to bring the kids across? Because he keeps on saying that they need to see their grandfather. Well, they've got to come to him. It's not down to him to go to them. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm suspicious of I'm suspicious of his motives behind this. I think there's more to it than just asking your dad to come along to something that you're promoting.
And Jobson, I've heard some of my comment section have said the King can host some of the competitors at Buckingham Palace afterwards. Dickie Arbiter suggested the King submit a video. There have been alternatives provided, but the vast majority of my audience would be incredibly disappointed if the king gave Harry this type of credibility, and especially would be turned off if Meghan Markle was included.
Well, I think that, I mean, whatever happens here, Kinsey, it's going to be short-lived because, you know, Harry's described William as his arch nemesis. Well, William, at some stage in the future, with the king living with cancer, is going to be in charge of the purse strings. He's going to be in charge of the whole train set. And he's not going to have his brother that, you know, annihilated his wife, really, and called him his arch nemesis and breached every trust that he could possibly do with his brother. He's just not going to. They're on a different, as Charlie said, they're on a different path, and it's a clear path that is to do with, I think, more like the late Queen Elizabeth, looking after the institution rather than worrying about the personal issues and personalities of individual members of the royal family. He'll be leaving William Charles a problem like, and I'm not comparing Harry with what Andrew did, but all I'm saying is going to leave him with a problem like the Queen left Andrew to Charles. Huge problem, and I don't think that that's fair to William. I think that they should be focused on what's right going forward. Now, the whole thing with William, with Harry, is that he is a bit of a chancer, to say the least. He wants to make sure that he can keep earning money. I suspect that there has to have been a conversation about who's paying the bill for the legal calamity as far as Harry is concerned. But, you know, this is the guy that keeps doing this, Kinsey. He lives in Montecito and he dips in and dips out. He's actually only seen his father, 3 times, twice on his own, once with his children. But he rails against everything we stand for in this country. They were offering him a place to stay at Buckingham Palace. Why? I really don't know. But, you know, he says it's to do with security. He attacks the free press. He attacks the free press and loses hands down against the Daily Mail. He then attacks the judiciary, which is independent, and calls it a whitewash, an independent judiciary that his father, as the king, is there to effectively stand guardian over. And then he sues the British government, which is his own father's government, which is an elected element of our democracy. Yet he lives in a mansion in Montecito. I don't understand. I think the king sometimes, and I personally, you know, I doubt whether the king will fall foul to this, but I don't think the king should have anything to do with him in terms of a public role as the king, because as a constitutional monarch, he's there to stand as head of the nation. Now, the reality is there is Harry, who would have been staying at Buckingham Palace, railing against a free press, an independent judiciary, and a government, an elected government, all of which the job of the crown is, the king's job, is to protect that and stand as the figurehead of it all. How can he possibly then start, you know, saying, oh, he's my son, I've got to do this? If you look at what happened with the abdication, what did the royal family do after they were betrayed by Edward VIII? They cut him out. And I think that is where we should be with Harry. And I understand the king has cancer, and I understand he wants to see his grandchildren. But sometimes, you know, if you are a king, you have to wear the crown. On the other occasions, it should be kept very private and not, therefore, giving Harry that chance to be inveigle his way back into a role in the royal family. I think he's made his bed, and I think he should lie in it, and so should Meghan.
Jabo, I haven't had your reaction since. I mean, you've broken some of the biggest stories about King Charles in your career. I haven't had your reaction since the Highgrove meeting. Were you surprised by the Highgrove meeting, and have your sources told you anything about, you know, the tone or how it came to fruition, or ultimately why it happened? Is it just a grandfather wanting to see his grandchildren, or legacy wise, is Charles trying to avoid being remembered as an evil father who didn't give his son a chance?
I don't think Charles is thinking like that. I think Charles is sensibly a kind man. I did have a tip there was going to be at Highgrove because there had been a change in there was a lot of activity going on that was not normally happening. I tipped off a couple of, you know, basically they tried to get photographs, and as happens sometimes, they never got photographs of them going in. My feeling on this is that Charles is a kind man who's living with cancer. At no stage we've been told he's doing well, but with no stage we've been told that he's not living with cancer. So there's a time limit to his reign and time limit to his life, sadly. In that time, he's been seeing lots of people that close to him. Michael Fawcett, for example, who was was railed against at one stage, and he had a very secret meeting with him at Windsor. Now, I think if your son is making overtures to want to see you and you've got this, you're obviously going to be in a more open position for that. And I don't blame him for that, and I don't blame him for wanting to see his grandchildren. But one thing he's got to be aware of, and I think the Queen was maybe always aware of it, maybe not so much in her later years, but you've got to be thinking about the next steward to the king, to the role of sovereign. And that is going to, if Harry's situation starts getting out of hand or gets more legs, it's going to give William a problem, and it's going to be seen as two, stags clashing. So I was surprised that he had the meeting? No. Do I think it was right? I'd say it was inevitable, but this is a time when we've got a government, we've got a fourth prime minister in, and God knows how long, and under Charles's reign, 7 in 10 years, the king's job is continuity of the whole of the democratic process. And I just think that when they were talking about this guy that was coming in, Andy Burnham, who wasn't even an MP when the last election took place with 35% of the vote, was just been shoehorned into the government. A lot of people found that, to be prime minister, a lot of people found that very difficult to cope with. And yet the king's role and everything to do with the king, we were discussing, is Harry coming for tea? I mean, it made it all so trivial. And I don't think that people quite understand the importance of, Charlie and I understand, and you do too, the constitutional monarchy, parliamentary democracy. But it's a very important political and powerful role. And it's just been turned into a circus by Harry and Meghan, and for their own benefit.
Charlie, he raises such a good point about Prince William and that kind of unfair responsibility. Are you worried about that falling on William, having to rein these two in?
Oh, yes. I mean, because the king's had to reel in his brother, and William could be faced with doing the same thing. And just one thing on the Tea Party, if it was going to be, the olive branch that everyone keeps on talking about, where was William? William was down the road playing polo and being photographed, walking hand in hand with his beautiful wife, near the polo ground. Now, if this was a genuine, let's bury the hatchet, not in each other, but let's just bury the hatchet, and we'll all get together and sort it out, William and Catherine would have been there. That would have been the ideal opportunity. The fact that they were not there just goes to show how large the gulf is between the rest of the family. The only reason that Camilla was there is she wanted to make sure that nothing went wrong. She wanted to, the Queen said recollections may vary. Well, Camilla was there to make sure no recollections may vary, that she was there to remember it all.
And she was there to protect the king because, obviously, as a let's be fair, Harry slaughtered Camilla in his book. He wasn't too bad on his father, but the reality is, by just writing it, was bad against his father. But ultimately, Camilla was there as the person to watch over the whole thing, to make sure that if the conversation started swaying towards how am I going to raise 18 million quid or whatever it is to pay my court costs, that his father didn't turn and say, "Oh, that'd be all right, darling. I'll write the darling boy," as he calls him. I'll write the check, because ultimately it's still a crown divided. I mean, it's without a doubt it is. And the reality is there's been 3 meetings with the king. And I know for a fact on the first meeting, because I wrote about it, is that when Harry came down, they made up an appointment so that the king could be interrupted in 25 minutes, so that someone came in and said, "Oh, you've got your procedure, sir." He never had a procedure. He just wanted to get off to Sandringham. So the first one wasn't exactly close. The second, they exchanged a few gifts, and it was only about 35, 40 minutes again. And this meeting was probably about an hour. So, look, is this great reconciliation? I don't think so. But at the same time, the king is in an invidious position. Any guy that's of a certain age and their son, who's living on the other side of the world, if you can imagine it, and wants to bring him to see his grandchildren, you're just not going to say no. But making it more official, that's the problem. And I agree with the majority of the viewers here, is that would be a big mistake, but at the moment, that's the impression the Sussex people are trying to get across, because it's the only way they've got left to make money, to still be hanging onto the coattails of monarchy.
So you do agree that the Sussexes are really the ones behind these leaked stories that Harry is 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He's almost there.
They're good. They have to be.
I mean, let me pull up this email I got this week that, I mean, I honestly, I couldn't believe I was responding. I had to respond to it, but it's Simon Vigor. He has a new book about royal wives. He believes that Prince Harry's idea of a hybrid or half in, half out may have been right all along. I said, you can just look at Australia and Meghan Markle, being compensated for the clothing she's wearing while embracing sick children, thanks to her AI app that she announced on the first day of her Australia trip. So there was some synergy, some strategy behind that shows you why the half in, half out doesn't work, because they're not responsible enough to respect, what the boundaries are.
They're never going to let Harry and Meghan be half in and half out. That was a plan, their plan, that was put before the Queen and the others, and they said, "No way, Jose, it ain't going to happen." And now Harry's trying to do this again through the back door. This part and parcel of what he's doing at the moment with all these leaks and coming over here. And doing Invictus. I mean, he should be doing it in any case, and Well Child and all that. But he's got another master plan going on in his tiny little brain that he can come back over here and still do some royal duties, and then float back to the Montecito. Exactly. And he's got this other thing he's got to sort out. At the end of this month, a judge is going to turn around and say, "You owe the Daily Mail X millions of pounds." He's got to try and find that money because no one else is going to fork it out for him.
Yeah. And it's my understanding Senabali has a legitimate case against him, and that's expected to go to court towards the end of next year. And that could be God knows how much money that he has to fork over to Senabali.
Have his hands full.
His father said to him, didn't he, before he started this? Now, I don't like using the word suicide, but I mean, that's basically what his father said to him. "Why are you doing this? Taking on the media like this? It's suicide. You're going to be..." And then he won a few on the bounce, where the News International caved in. They maybe shouldn't have done, but the Mirror that settled. The bottom line is, or lost. So the bottom line here is he was persuaded by a few lawyers that this was a system like an ATM where he could just say a few things, get emotional in the witness box, and be paid out millions. Well, it didn't work because the system in this country, in legal system, is independent and is rigorous, and Mr. Justice Nicklin did his job. Now, and I feel that, now I think he will go cap in hand to his father, and I think his father may well write a check for him from his private bank account. He's a very loaded man, but the fact is we're not going to know about it, and it won't be coming from public funds, but we're not going to know about it. He'll write it from his personal Coots check. But
because that's what the Queen did for Andrew,
Well, that's what and as we understand it, according to the Sun, Charles contributed for Andrew as well, even though it's been, they tried to say it has been the case. The Sun splashed it on their front page, and I believe that will be the case. Now, my understanding is, they're very, very rich people, and so although this sounds an awful lot of money to us, and it is 16 million or whatever it's going to be, it could even be more. The king could happily write that. Well, not happily, but could write that check, and I'm sure he will.
Oh my gosh, Jobson. But didn't you write a story about how at one point the king was so frustrated with Prince Harry that he told Queen Elizabeth, "I'm not an ATM, or I'm not a bank."
Yeah, that's right. He did. But that was when he was going on about his security, and they were sending millions. I mean, both the Queen and Charles, my understanding, he sent millions of pounds to Harry when he first departed, and then it stopped. Now, that may have been the moment they thought, okay, he's got to stand on his own 2 feet. But I think in this particular case, because it's a huge amount of money and it is a legal case, that they're probably, I don't think he's necessarily got that sort of money to write that check. And the king is, is a very, very wealthy man. And if he can write it from his private bank account, I'm sure he will. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to have to write that check. And if Harry hasn't got the money, he hasn't got the money. So what are they going to do? Bankrupt him? I don't think they will. It's just not going to happen. So I think to keep it quiet, I think that's what will happen. But Charles, we won't know about it. We won't know about it.
If the word ever gets out that took place, there would be the public would feel such a betrayal
Yeah,
you know, because it would be, I told you so. And then look, and you're going to reward this guy when we told him to stop.
I'm not as convinced as Robert that Charles will have to write the check. I'm just not convinced of it. Robert may well be right. I'm not suggesting he's wrong. But I think that, you know, as Robert has said, Charles has already forked out a lot of money for Harry and Meghan, and he's pulled the plug on it. And he's seen the reaction that happened when the 12 million pound check was written by whoever it was, the Queen or Charles or whatever. The reaction by people, it's still carrying on today that the money should never be paid, should never have been paid by the royal family, even if it is their money. And this money that the judge has got to rule on, which is 34 million. Now, the 7 defendants have got insurance, which only covers between 16 and 18 million. So they're about 18 million short, 16 to 18 million short between the 7. So I think Harry's probably got enough money to cover his share. Is Elton John going to be paying more because he's Elton John? Is Harry going to be paying more because he's Harry?
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't.
No,
I mean,
I
Dora
agree.
Lawrence. I mean, Dora Lawrence
If
could have the money.
if you split it the 7, it's not going to be, you
Oh,
know,
that's right. Yeah.
in double figures. It's going to be single figures. And I don't think the king should pay anything towards it. And I think that people would be, you know, the normal people would be very, very disappointed if he did. And of course, you're going to get people who say, yeah, you're saying that he paid it out of his own bank account, but I'll bet we paid for it.
Well, they think that anyway, don't they?
They do that anyway. You know, that's
I mean,
what
the reality on it is, I mean, I heard from someone that I'm sure that, you know, the Queen had 70 years to sort all of family out with money. And I'm pretty, and from what I've seen recently, the King buying that other house for Camilla from private funds next to the one in Raymil House, and doing all sorts of things over the, you know, things over time financially. I'm sure that he knows William will just give Harry, you know, nothing. So yeah. I'm sure he'll try and sort out what he can for his son and his grandchildren, because at the end of the day, blood is thicker than water. I'm sure that he'll be thinking, when I'm gone, my money goes totally to William, you know, for all the reasons said. And that's why he's probably trying to sort it all out now. I wouldn't think he'll wait until William's king.
I want us to end on a happy note, gentlemen. Cate Blanchett has offered high praise for Prince William's work on the environment after serving alongside him on the Earthshot Prize Council. The 2-time Academy Award winner, again, when we talk about some of the A-listers, like enamored with the working royals, described the Prince of Wales as extraordinary and a hands-on leader, adding that his commitments to conservation is something he inherited from King Charles and Prince Philip. Her comments carry particular weight because they come from someone who's worked with William directly. Earthshot has become William's flagship initiative, focused on finding practical solutions to environmental challenges rather than simply raising awareness of the problem. Charles, I had to answer questions about the politics involved here, which I thought was ridiculous. And I said, domestic violence, homelessness, these are all things that become political too, but we don't yank royals away from those themes.
You can't fault William on this on this at all. This is, you know, very much, you know, his baby, just as Invictus Games are Harry's baby. This is his project. This is the thing that he hopes he's going to be, one of the things he's going to be remembered for. And it's only right that people like Cate Blanchett, she's not the first A-lister to come out and praise him for it. You know, it is the cause célèbre these days, the environment, and doing things to improve the environment. And so it's right that she steps in and says, you know, he's doing a great job, and this is the type of guy we need, you know, to do these sort of things. He's not forgetting about domestic violence or homelessness. He's also trying to do that as well.
Yeah. But those are also, you know, government assisted causes that we never ever accuse him of getting too political when he shows up to try to, you know, change the world when it comes to the homeless crisis. Why do they politicize the environment? Why is he being criticized for that?
There's not much, well, I mean, people are always going to criticize members of the royal family, no matter what they did. If they stood on a street corner, they'd be criticized. And if they gave away all their millions, as William has done, he's given quite a lot of the Duchy of Cornwall away for homelessness. I mean, I just think he's doing such a great job, and we are in such a state in this country with the government. Robert's mentioned, the number of prime ministers. We've parachuted a guy in who wasn't even an MP at the last election. And there's so many problems in this country that they've got to sort out. And they have got no right to criticise, or anybody on that government to criticise Prince William for what he's trying to do. He may not be helping millions of people, but he's certainly helping thousands of people. There's no question about that. And best of luck to him.
I mean, Jabbo, he might be helping millions of people by funding some of these initiatives that are going to leave the planet better than we found it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my own views on Earthshot. I mean, I think it's a great project. I think it's building businesses that can actually make a difference. And I've been to a few of the businesses and seen the way they work. It's great, and I think it's a great idea. Just taking it from the JFK, the moonshot idea that we could put a man on the moon. Why can't we actually solve this issue? But I think actually his father, Charles, has got a stronger idea, and it's all to do with the money. And I think it's to make sure that all businesses, and the only way you're going to do this is that all businesses are in the city and that are getting benefits and richer through supporting environmental causes. And that, I remember interviewing him about this. He said, it's all about the money. If companies in the city can make more money if they're environmentally friendly than if they're not, then they're going to back it, because that's the way the business goes. And he believes with his projects that he's doing that, I think it's called the Carter. I can't remember, not Magna Carta, but it's like, he's got his own project there. I think William is great because he's a great front man, and he does communicate and present very well. When he launched it, and there was Sir David Attenborough, and they were doing the walk together, talking about these things. I think he's a great frontman. People have criticised him because they say, "Oh well, he's got enough money to solve homelessness." Well, yeah, but he's a figurehead who can actually help transfer formal homelessness, and that's what he is doing here with his A-listers and bringing people together. He's a great convener. But the only thing I would say is hopefully he'll be allowed to continue this when he's king. And the reason I think he should be allowed to is because the environment is not a partisan problem. Yes, certain parties and political figures say they don't agree with it. Donald Trump says there is no climate change or global warming. But the bottom line is all of us across all parties agree that we want to make the environment better. The same as all of us across all parties want to get rid of homelessness and get rid of domestic violence. So therefore, it's not a partisan issue. Therefore, it's no problem for the royal family to continue, because it's only if he would continue it if he was king and it was going against his own government's stance. Well, no government's going to go against trying to make the world a better place by solving the climate change problem. So, he's on safe ground. I just hope that he'll be allowed to continue it going forward, because he's done a terrific job. As Charlie says, he's been a leader in this way. I don't know that many other issues. And I think his father has too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Rob, I didn't know that you had a Substack, so now I have to go subscribe to. I'm so glad you told me. So I'm going to go.
Oh, I've been writing on my. Funnily enough, having Charlie on, and on that wall and behind Charlie, there's a picture. I've noticed it of us all in Poland. I think it was 1993 or 4, and we were typing away on our Tandis. Charlie is in a sort of light suit, and I actually look incredibly. I almost look like a film star. It was that long ago.
Of course, but you do. You look like a film star.
A long time ago, Robert.
All right. Well, make sure you subscribe.
But yeah, I'm doing the Substack. I'm doing a memoir on there as well, so it's quite fun actually. I'm loving it. I love I love the people on Substack. They come back to you with all sorts of comments, and it's a really great interactive site.
Oh, well, I'll explore that, and Charlie, patiently waiting for yours. All right. We'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone.